Let's talk about the next axiom then. This is, to me, the most important one to understand out of all the training we're going to do today. If you get this one and none of the other ones, I will be happy. Jason's premium pricing axiom number 4. Price is often the constraint to a breakthrough solution. All right? Price is often the constraint to a breakthrough solution. What do you suppose I mean by that? It's important that we really examine this. This changed my life in business when I truly understood this and really, really captured this. Let me run you through a scenario. This is how most people conceptualize products or services or any solution that they're going to create, that they're going to end up selling to somebody, right? Here's what they start with, generally speaking. They say, okay, people pay about this much for this type of product. So how can we create a product for about this much of a price tag? And that makes sense in one aspect, because they say, okay, obviously the market will bear this, and it's proven that they'll spend this amount of money. So if we create a similar product for this price point and then add to it to make it better than the alternatives, therefore we should be able to make money. So they work backwards. They start at price and they work backwards. But what's the problem with that? What's the problem with starting from price and working backwards? Because I almost never start at price in that way and work backwards. Starting at price and working backwards is like the tail wagging the dog. Okay? Here's where you should start. You should ask yourself this when you're strategically thinking about pricing and about creating your products and your solutions. If price were not an issue, if my market could pay anything at all, if they were only interested in the best solution possible, what would that solution look like? And then you start drawing it out. You start writing it out. You start diagramming it out. Now, here's what almost always inevitably happens, because I've done this a few hundred times. Clients consult with me, and I have many clients on retainer right now it's like, I think, 25 grand for an 8-hour blocks. We usually do them in 2-hour sessions, right? I think it works at like $3,125 an hour. Worth every penny if you're the right business, right? And most of the time with these clients, this is what we work on, is working backwards from the ideal solution. And then inevitably this is what happens. We put something on paper and we say, yeah, that's impossible. There's no possible way we could make that happen. It's way too costly. It takes too many resources. It takes too much effort. It will be unfulfillable. It's not even doable. But guess what we start doing from that position? We start at the impossible and we work backwards. What happens when you do that? When you say, boy, if I could just engineer the perfect solution and I didn't have to worry about what it would cost, that if I had this solution, they would pay the price no matter what it was. What would that solution look like? And then you go out there and you start fantasizing about these solutions that you're going to build. You're like, well, we'll build a robot that will fly into their house, sit down, and build their website for them. Okay, put that on the paper, right? Hey, we're not censoring ourselves. Let's just do it, right? And you come down and you say, okay, that's impossible. Let's dial in a little bit. What happens? What do you think happens when you start taking away some of these impossibilities? What are you left with? I prefer my trainings to be interactive, by the way. I don't think me just talking to you helps you learn as well. So don't be shy. There's many, many of you on the call. So wake up and put something in, right? I like Drew says, I'm confused. That's good, because out of confusion comes understanding, right? You know what happens if you start with the impossible and pare it down? You flirt with the edge of impossibility while still figuring out a possible solution. You come as close to the actual limits as possible to what you're capable of doing. But you know what happens when you start at the lowest level and try to work your way up? You really never know where the limitations are. You really never know if you're pushing up towards the limits or not. Isn't that interesting? My mentor always used to say this to me. He says, because we would talk about long distance running, because he was big into long distance running. He would say, you know what? Everybody at the end sprints towards the finish line, right? He goes, but nobody ever starts sprinting and see how far they go till they they can't go any further. I thought, crap, you're right. Let's start out on a sprint and find out how far we go before we keel over and throw up on the side and can no longer put one foot in front of the other, because then we know we left it all out there. We know we did everything we could, right? And that's how we start. So, Wilson and I, we do this quite often. And here's ultimately, you're going to discover this principle a little bit later, this axiom, but ultimately what we discovered is we built a solution. We said, God, in order for us to fulfill that solution, it would cost $15,000. Then the question becomes, is there a market that we think would pay $15,000 for this thing? And almost always the answer is yes. The second question is, can we reach that market? And almost always the answer is yes. Now, here's what's funny about that. Somebody very quickly break out a calculator. What's 120 times 15,000? What's 120 times 15,000? Just making a number up here, right? 120 times 15,000. How many dollars is that? You guys should have your calculators here. 1.8 million? Hey, John, good to see you again, man. Okay. 1.8 million, right? Is it worth you being in a market where there's only 200 customers if it meant 1.8 million for you? Yeah, I think so. Most businesses that I interact with, they might have a list of 50,000, 70,000, 100,000 customers, right? And we look at that customer list and we say, are there 200 people we could reach that would spend $15,000 on this solution? If the answer is yes, we do it. Now, here's what sucks about that. Most of the rest of your market will not be interested in that solution. Most of them, even if they want it, they will not be able to afford it. But do we cater to the masses? That's what most people do. And unfortunately, those 200 people that are dying for a solution like that never get it because nobody caters to the small, vital few. That's the double benefit. Is it you can do a lot with a little, but also at the same time, you are going to make them like you even more, because nobody focuses on just 200 people in a 100,000 person list or just 200 people. They want to sell them all. We just rolled out a service on the back end of something for a client where it's a $4,000 a month continuity program. Minimum commitment will be 12-month minimum commitment. And I flat out said, we only want 70 and or 75. We'll only take 75 and we won't take more than 75. And we were able to a small pocket of about 10,000 users. We're going to hit 75. We're going to keep it at 75. And that's going to make us $1 million net profit per year additional income by focusing on just 70 customers that we knew that particular solution, 75, that particular solution was the perfect thing for them. They couldn't find that anywhere else, and they were willing to pay for it because it was so perfectly situated and suited to them. But if we would have started with, what can we sell for $4,000 a month? It would have never worked that way, right? Wouldn't have worked that way. So for most of you, the reason you can't engineer a superior solution to your marketplace is because you are limiting yourself to what you're willing to charge. You have capped your ability at a certain price ceiling of what you're willing to charge a customer, and you won't go past it. It's a psychological barrier, right? And unfortunately, that limits your creative thinking. That limits your ability to consider the possibilities of a better solution. Because if you, God forbid, you came up with that better solution, you'd never be able to do anything with it because you couldn't sell it, because you couldn't sell it at the right price. Does that make sense? Are you following me here? I intentionally, I was going to bring up my glasses. I bought these pair of glasses, $1,000 pair of glasses. So I got my corrective surgery, so I don't wear actual glasses anymore. So I'm like, I'm going to treat myself to sunglasses. So all pricing decisions are irrational, by the way. And I'm going to talk more about that in a second. My MacBook is not plugged in. 1 second. Let me see if I can plug this in. It's not charging for some reason. It should be. I don't know why it isn't. All right. That was a close one. Okay. I'm wearing a belt right now. I don't know if you could see it. Let me see if I can stand up. It's a Gucci belt. And it was, I think, $550. And most belt makers would never sit down and say, let's create a belt that we could sell for $550, right? It seems absurd, doesn't it? Who would ever think to do that? But see, that's not how Gucci decides how they price things. And we'll talk more about some of the psychology of luxury branding here in a second, because most of us are not in luxury markets, or we're not luxury type of businesses. But instead, they work backwards from what would somebody love to buy to have status over somebody else. Now, what's brilliant about that is it's not like they make a crappy belt. I don't know if you're a connoisseur or consumer of luxury items. I've recently started doing this in the last few years. And what I've noticed is most of the time, the construction is superior. Now, it's not, if it's 10 times as much money, it's not 10 times superior, but almost always luxury brands aren't just cheaply put goods that are just hype and marketing surrounding them that make people buy them for very expensive prices. They typically are better constructed. They are typically made from better material. They typically go through processes and come in packagings and have support around them that non-luxury goods don't. Again, it's only marginally better, but it is better. But because they have such a margin on status, they can do this additional construction to make it truly a superior, better quality product. Again, it's not 10 times better quality, but for certain people, for certain goods, 1.2 times better quality is worth them paying 10 times the price for. Because they would prefer to have that little extra quality, and they will pay a premium for it. But if you don't allow yourself the margin to invest in a superior solution, you will never be able to create a superior solution. I won't say never. You can, but it will be a lot harder. Right? Price is often the constraint to a breakthrough solution. So is there something in your market that you can find a breakthrough on? Where I love to start, I had a client, not a client, but a friend. So I'm on an Alaskan fishing trip. Yes, this guy, Alaska, right? And we went on this fishing trip last year. It was pretty cool. 3 days, deep sea fishing. I caught like 50 pounds of fish, and it was just a really great experience. So we're on this boat for like 8 hours a day. One day I'm on the boat with Dave Asprey. He's the guy that created Bulletproof Coffee, Bulletproof, very fascinated industry guy. So I spent 8 hours on a boat with him and a couple other guys, right? And another day I'm on a boat with this other guy. It's a guy named Todd. And Todd says, I don't want to do coaching anymore. I'm working with these, I think it was mortgage brokers. And he goes, I'm just tired of it because, most of them, I don't look forward to getting on the calls with them. They complain. They don't do what I ask them to do. And it's just not worth it for me anymore. I said, well, what do you charge them? He goes, we charge them $25,000 a year for this type of coaching. And I said to him, this was really funny. I said, what would they have to pay you for you to no longer be irritated with the coaching? He goes, what do you mean? I said, what would make it so that way you would enjoy it? What number, what dollar figure would make this enjoyable for you? Or is there a dollar figure? He says, it has to be at least $50,000. I said, what if it was $75,000? Would that be even better? He said, yes. Now, here's my second question I said to him. I said, do you think you would attract the same quality and nature of person at $75,000 that you do today at $25,000? And he says, absolutely not. He says, all my clients that I really enjoy doing this with, he goes, most of them probably would pay $75,000 now that I think of it, because they're not in this, they don't have these issues that these guys that can find a way to pay $25,000 do. I said, oh, interesting. I said, so even if you took in a significant less amount of clients, even if you only took in 1% of what you're taking in now, would you do it? He goes, yeah, because at least the people I took in, I'd be very happy on. I said, so would you even do your marketing where you'd say it's $75,000 and you have to be this person and you have to jump through this hoop and you have to qualify for this thing? He says, oh yeah, absolutely. And then the last thing I said to him, I said, don't you think you would sell, like, how many do you think you sell? He says, I think I sell 20. And I did the math. I said, that's how much money you could make. And then I asked him, I said, how do you feel about that? He goes, well, I'm scared. I said, why? And he says, well, the highest price in our market is $25,000. There's me and two other guys who do coaching for $25,000, and nobody's ever sold it for $75,000. I'm essentially asking him to try out a new offer that's 3 times more expensive than the already existing most expensive option in his category. Isn't that insane? Can't you see that could be scary? But we didn't start with what the market will bear. We didn't start with what is logical or what makes sense, right? I literally said, what would it be worth it for you to do this thing you don't want to do anymore? And when he threw that number, I started working with him. Okay, do you think people would buy that if they're the right type of people? What would they need for that to happen? And we worked backwards. And he was thoroughly convinced. And then he went on to launch something that was 3 times more expensive than the highest price thing in his market. And it's crushing it because he had a breakthrough solution when he tripled his prices in a business that he was getting ready to throw away and get rid of and walk away from. So price is often the constraint to a breakthrough solution.